Two women were dragged onto the execution platform. Their boots clanged against the metal as they walked, unshackled, but surrounded by guards in black armor. They had refused chains. It was meant to humiliate them, to suggest that these two human generals, so feared and so praised by their kind, were not even dangerous enough to bind. The guards gripped their rifles tightly nonetheless, as though the absence of shackles might turn into regret at any second. The taller of the two, scars slashing her jawline, wore her old military coat, torn and scorched from the final battle, where she had been cornered. Her eyes were steady, colder than the steel beneath her boots. She did not blink under the harsh lights. The shorter one, hair cropped tight, face streaked with dust, carried herself as though she were entering a strategy meeting rather than a death stage. When one of the alien officers hissed in her face, she only tilted her head and said softly, "You'll regret this." Not loud, not for the cameras, just for him. And the way the officer stiffened told the galaxy that he had heard it like a curse. The announcer's voice rang out, a reptilian drawl fed through amplifiers. "Behold the end of human resistance. Behold the collapse of the predator race." These women, who thought themselves generals, who commanded the savages of Earth, who dared to defy the Galactic Empire, shall be executed as example. The crowd of aliens, assembled like a menagerie of species, hissed, clicked, and roared approval. From the outer colonies to the homeworld's decadent spires, they watched with satisfaction. Humanity had been unruly, troublesome, more resourceful than their primitive technology should have allowed. To strike down their icons was to announce supremacy forever. The general stood, unflinching. One lifted her chin, as if daring the galaxy to keep watching, as if her eyes themselves were blades pressed to the throat of the Empire. The executioner raised the plasma halberd. Lights flashed. The announcer roared, "Let it be known, no human defiance shall remain." What happened next was bloodless, quick, merciless. The weapons flared, and in twin arcs of energy the women fell. Their bodies hit the steel with a thud, swallowed by the roar of the crowd. The serpent crest shimmered overhead. Alien dignitaries clapped their segmented limbs together. Reporters broadcast phrases like the end of an infestation and the predator species tamed. And yet, across all those broadcasts, sharp-eyed observers noticed something peculiar. Just before the end, both women smiled. Not in surrender, not in madness, but in something harder, stranger, deeper. A smile that was almost conspiratorial, as though they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. The footage repeated endlessly, slowed down, analyzed by alien propagandists trying to explain it away. Nerves, delusion, even humans' infamous gallows humor. None of those explanations made anyone who saw the footage sleep easier. Especially not the guards, who swore the air itself had grown colder in that instant. Afterward, the announcer strutted about the stage, reveling in the Empire's glory. "You see," he crooned, his scales shimmering in the light. "The myth of the human will shattered. The predator hides behind bravado, but here, stripped bare, they are weak. And what of their mates, their consorts, their fragile bonds of mammalian sentiment? They will weep in silence, powerless." He chuckled, a sound like knives scraping glass. "If they even dare to show themselves." The alien crowd loved it. They jeered. They laughed. They imitated human speech in crude mockeries. One imitated the accent of Earth soldiers, saying, "We fight for freedom," before collapsing in exaggerated death throes. Another parroted human battle cries, making them sound ridiculous. A chorus of alien youths sang a cruel chant, "Humans bite, humans burn, but all shall bow and never return." In the control tower above the arena, officers drank victory wine. They toasted to their emperor, to their fleets, to their conquest. "At last, the humans learn their place," one said, mandibles clicking smugly. "The last generals have fallen. Their armies will scatter like sand." "Perhaps we will breed them as slaves now," another murmured. "Strange creatures, but resilient. We could put them to use." But in the corner, an older strategist leaned heavily on his staff, shaking his scaled head. "You fools," he said softly. No one listened. He tried again, louder. You do not understand. You do not kill humanity by killing its generals." They laughed at him, calling him senile. "Then how do you kill them, old one?" sneered a younger officer. His eyes clouded. "I do not think you can." The broadcasts looped for days. On dozens of worlds, aliens celebrated, burning effigies of Earth's flag, dressing in crude parodies of human uniforms. They reenacted the executions as theater. In taverns, alien soldiers laughed over human food rations they had confiscated, powder coffee, canned beans, hot sauce bottles. They mocked the idea that such creatures had ever posed a threat. Primitive, they scoffed. Uncivilized. Obsessed with taste and fire. Now broken. And yet, beneath the jeering, unease stirred. The footage of those smiles spread like a virus. Some aliens, watching late at night, shivered when they saw it. Something about the calm, about the way the women's eyes glinted just before the end. As though they weren't afraid. As though they were waiting. On one mining colony, a young alien worker whispered to his companion, "Why would they smile like that?" His companion shrugged, but both stayed awake long after their shift, unable to shake the image. On a frontier world, a squad of soldiers joked nervously about it, until one muttered, "What if they knew something? What if?" He stopped. The silence that followed was heavier than laughter could break. Even in the emperor's own palace, advisors debated in hushed tones. "Should we not be wary of reprisals?" one asked. The emperor waved a jeweled hand. "Reprisals? From whom? Their fleets are shattered. Their command is dead. Earth hides behind its blue skies, trembling. There will be no reprisals." He smiled, teeth sharp. "And if their men come, we will kill them too." But the strategist with the staff whispered to the marble floor, "You do not know their men." On Earth itself, silence. That was what unnerved the galaxy most. Humanity did not broadcast rage or grief. No fiery speeches. No threats of vengeance. Their channels went quiet. Their diplomats vanished from alien courts. Their traders pulled back from markets. Silence, vast and heavy as the dark between stars. And then the rumors began. Whispers in the mess halls of distant stations. The husbands. The mates of the slain generals. Not just soldiers. Not just men. Legends. Myths made flesh. Names spoken like curses. The Baba Yaga, the American Boogeyman. Some aliens laughed when they heard it. Fairy tales, they scoffed. Humans invent monsters to scare children. But others, older ones, shuddered. They remembered stories traded in the shadows of wars, of a man who moved like silence, and a man who fought like thunder. A man whose courtesy was more terrifying than cruelty, and another whose laughter was death itself. In the cantinas of fringe worlds, drunk soldiers muttered warnings. Don't touch their women. Don't touch their families. That's how you summon them. Some swore they'd seen one once, on a battlefield littered with corpses, sipping coffee as though it were a quiet morning. Others spoke of a shadow draped in a tattered American flag, walking alone into armies and walking out untouched, humming songs no alien could understand. The empire dismissed it all. Propaganda, superstition, the last defense of a broken species. They raised toasts and repeated the execution footage like a trophy. But among the lowest ranks, fear festered. No matter how many times they played the execution, no matter how many times they laughed, the smiles of the women refused to fade. And far away, in a place no alien eye could see, two men watched the broadcasts in silence. One poured himself a cup of black coffee, setting it down carefully, like a ritual. The other draped a worn flag across his shoulders, cracked open a beer, and grinned without joy. Neither spoke for a long while. The galaxy was roaring with laughter, but they sat in stillness. Finally, one of them muttered, polite as a churchgoer, "They shouldn't have done that." The other nodded, voice low, rumbling like distant thunder. "Now they've gone and invited us." Silence preceded them, a silence so vast it unnerved entire fleets. For weeks after the executions, the Empire had grown used to silence from Earth, but this silence was different. Not political, not diplomatic. It was the stillness before lightning. And then the storm broke, not with weapons fire, not with declarations of war, but with music. The first ship that slipped past the perimeter defenses was so small that the Empire's radar dismissed it as debris. When patrol fighters closed in, it did not fire. It did not flee. Instead, a voice crackled across the comms, warm, human, disarmingly polite. "Pardon the interruption. I seem to have lost my way. Could you direct me to the nearest command station?" The patrol leader barked laughter. Behind him, his squad chuckled nervously. Then the sound came, music of all things, bleeding into their channels. A mellow guitar riff, followed by a voice crooning in an ancient Earth language. Sinatra, swinging like velvet through vacuum. The patrol leader opened his mouth to sneer, but his words turned to a scream as the small craft blurred forward. No weapons. No missiles. Just a docking maneuver executed with such precision that his squadron's ships scattered in panic. A hatch opened. Out stepped a man dressed in black, his movements unhurried, his hair slicked back with the calm defiance of ritual. He carried no visible weapon. Yet when his gaze swept the bay, soldiers stumbled back as though shadow itself had walked in. He bowed, faintly, as if arriving at a dinner party. "Thank you for the escort," he said softly. "I'll take it from here." They whispered his name in terror before they even realized they knew it. The Yaga. Elsewhere, in a different sector, the second ship made its entrance not with stealth, but with thunder. Alarms wailed across an orbital station as sensors detected a vessel tearing through a warp gate without clearance, leaving the gate sputtering in sparks behind it. It was ugly, cobbled together from stolen parts, and painted with crude red stripes that looked almost like claw marks. The entire station braced for an attack. But when the comms opened, what came through wasn't a threat. It was laughter. Rich, rolling, undeniably human. "Howdy, folks," the voice drawled, with the affable cadence of a man greeting neighbors over a backyard fence. "Heard you been messin' with my people. Thought I'd drop by." Cameras locked onto the airlock as it cycled open, and then he stepped out. Tall, broad-shouldered, his boots hitting the deck like drums of war. A cape, frayed at the edges, painted in faded red, white, and blue, dragged behind him. On his hip, a sidearm built with Earth's stubborn craftsmanship. In his hand, nothing but a can he cracked open with a hiss. He drank, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and grinned at the terrified soldiers. "Never thought I'd say this," he said, "but y'all look like you could use a barbecue." They called him the Boogeyman, though the humans had another word for him. The American nightmare wrapped in a flag. The Empire had mocked humanity for its sentimentality. But when the husbands came, the galaxy realized sentiment could be weaponized. The Baba Yaga moved like inevitability itself, polite, cold, eyes sharper than plasma blades. The Boogeyman moved like a storm at a county fair, his humor more terrifying than cruelty, his grin the mask of a predator disguised as a neighbor. Together, they advanced not with armies, but alone, and that made it worse. Armies could be measured, countered, defeated. These two men were immeasurable. The first confrontation was recorded in fragments, shaky footage smuggled out by panic survivors. In one, the Baba Yaga walks down a corridor of the flagship Skur du Dawn. Guards fire. He keeps walking. Bullets, plasma, ion rounds, all seem to miss, or perhaps he does not permit them to hit. A guard screams, then collapses, throat slit by a weapon no one saw. Another tries to retreat. He finds himself pressed gently against the wall, a whisper in his ear. "This is me, being merciful." The recording ends there, cut by static and blood. The Boogeyman's footage was louder. He burst into a training hall filled with cadets, kicked the doors open, and tossed his empty can aside. "Afternoon, y'all," he said cheerfully. The cadets froze. He looked at them, at their trembling hands clutching rifles. He did not raise his gun. Instead, he reached into his pack, pulled out a second can, and cracked it open. "You're young," he said, voice soft. "Go home. Hug your mom. Don't turn into your bosses." He set the can down in the center of the hall. "That's my peace offering." Then he left, door swinging shut, leaving a room full of cadets too afraid to touch the drink. Hours later, when senior officers arrived, they found the hall empty. Every cadet gone. Rifles abandoned. The galaxy tried to laugh it off, Propaganda outlets called them mythical Boogeyman, human trickery dressed up as legend. But panic leaked through the cracks. Imperial garrisons began deserting. Officers flinched at shadows in corridors. Commanders doubled their security, then tripled it. Whispers spread. If you heard Earth music on your comms, it was too late. If you smelled smoke, barbecue, or gun oil in the airlock, the Boogeyman was already inside. The Baba Yaga style was silence and precision. He dismantled fleets not by destroying them, but by removing their keystones. Communication hubs sliced apart in the dead of night. Supply lines vanished, convoys left adrift. Officers woke to find coded notes pinned to their doors. Justice is patient. Ships reported hearing footsteps in their corridors, though cameras showed nothing. One admiral, convinced of hallucination, ordered his men to stand down. Hours later, he was found dead at his desk, a cup of coffee cooling beside him, untouched. The Boogeyman style was spectacle. He once walked into a military parade on a captured world, cape dragging through the dust. Soldiers froze mid-step. He raised a megaphone he'd stolen from a guard, said, "Hell show you got here. Mind if I cut in and open fire?" But he didn't aim for soldiers. He aimed for the statues, the banners, the symbols of empire. Within minutes, the parade ground was rubble. He stood atop the ruins, lifted the flag from his back, and planted it in the ash. "That's better," he muttered, before vanishing into the crowd. Witnesses claimed he hummed an Earth anthem as he left. Alien civilians began to whisper the names with reverence and fear. "One fights like silence," they said. "The other fights like laughter." Children asked their parents, "Will they come here?" And the parents had no answer. Markets grew quiet when humans passed through. Some aliens even began leaving offerings, coffee beans, bread, crude drawings of flags, in hopes of appeasing the ghosts. In the halls of the Imperial Senate, fear turned to argument. Some species demanded negotiations. "We must not provoke them further," one counselor pleaded. Others mocked the idea. "They are only two men, flesh and blood, like us." But even as he spoke, a courier burst in, pale with terror. The Baba Yaga had infiltrated a fleet meeting, walking into a war room filled with admirals. He had not killed them all, only one, the loudest, the one who had mocked the generals before their execution. He left a single sentence scrawled in blood on the table. "Everything else is optional." The emperor raged, ordering bounties placed on the humans' heads, fleets dispatched, planets locked down. But soldiers went missing before they could even deploy. Bounty hunters returned broken, whispering of shadows and laughter in the dark. The Empire's strongest killers swore they would not pursue the humans, not for any price. And yet the Emperor insisted, his voice sharp, "We killed their women. They will break like any other beast." His words echoed in the chamber, unconvincing even to himself. What unnerved the galaxy most was not the deaths. It was the restraint. The Baba Yaga and the Boogeyman did not slaughter civilians. They did not burn planets. They chose their targets with surgical precision, their patience colder than cruelty. It was not war, it was justice, delivered in doses, each act a scalpel cut into the Empire's arrogance. The galaxy realized, with growing dread, that the humans were not fighting yet. They were preparing. Somewhere in deep space, on a derelict station, the two men finally met. The cameras did not see it, but survivors swore they heard fragments through static. The clink of mugs, the crack of a can, two voices speaking softly. "We're making progress," one said. "Step by step." The other chuckled. "They're still laughing at us." "That's good. Let them laugh." A pause. "When do we show them?" Silence, then the answer, "When it hurts most." The Empire celebrated fewer victories now. Parades were canceled. Propaganda broadcasts grew strained, repeating footage of the general's execution as though trying to remind themselves it had actually happened. But the smiles, those damn smiles, haunted every replay. Even the announcer who had boasted that night drank heavily now, staring at the footage and whispering. Why did they smile? No one had the courage to answer. And in the dark, two ships moved closer to the Empire's heart, their signals quiet, their engines whispering promises of vengeance. On one ship, a man in black stirred his coffee and waited. On the other, a man in a cape tapped his boot in rhythm, humming an anthem only humans could understand. Neither was rushing. They were already inside the Empire's walls. And the galaxy, holding its breath, began to understand the cruelest truth of all. This was only the beginning. The Empire gathered in panic, disguised as pomp. The Senate chamber, a cathedral of steel and crystal, glowed with banners and fire, but the light only sharpened the shadows under every alien eye. Representatives hissed, clicked, bellowed, and chattered, their voices a storm of denial. They are only two men, one insisted, mandibles twitching. Two. Against trillions. Then why do fleets go silent when they appear? Another snapped. Why are we losing admirals in their own quarters? Murmurs of discontent spread like cracks through glass. For every boast, there was a whisper of dread. For every denial, a memory of those smiles. At the dais, the Emperor rose, silencing the chamber with a sweep of his jeweled hand. We are the greatest civilization the stars have ever birthed, he thundered. Two humans cannot undo the destiny of serpents. His voice carried, but his eyes were too sharp, his tail twitching too often. He knew the truth beneath the bravado. Fear had already taken root, and fear spreads faster than any plague. Reports piled higher. Mining colonies abandoned. Patrol ships vanishing, found later adrift. Crews missing, coffee cups still steaming in the galleys. Command centers breached, their walls marked with the same message scrawled in human letters. Justice is patient. Merchants whispered of seeing a man in black at spaceports, boarding freighters with a nod, vanishing before they docked. Others swore they'd glimpsed a caped figure on frontier moons, laughing with children, leaving behind nothing but ash where garrisons once stood. Each story was dismissed as rumor, yet none could be disproven. Too many fragments, too many corpses, too many eyes haunted by shadows. The Empire responded with force. They doubled their patrols, tripled their garrisons, promised rewards beyond imagination to any who captured the humans. None returned to claim them. Bounty hunters, assassins, mercenary bands, all ended the same way. Some were found floating in space, their weapons melted into useless slag. Others simply disappeared. A few sent back final transmissions, filled with incoherent screams, then silence. The most terrifying were those who lived. A mercenary captain returned, his eyes hollow, his voice trembling. He spoke of a man who smiled at him and said, "You're not the one I came for." The captain dropped his weapons, fell to his knees, and begged never to be sent again. On conquered planets, alien civilians began to light candles at night, imitating the human custom they'd seen in old Earth footage. They whispered human names they barely understood, prayers mingled with fear. Baba Yaga walks like silence. The Boogeyman laughs like thunder. Parents told children to behave, or else the humans would come. Yet the same children carved crude flags into walls, little talismans of protection. What was meant as terror became legend. The Empire's propaganda, repeated endlessly, turned into scripture for resistance. The Emperor summoned his High Council of War. Admirals and generals gathered in a fortress orbiting the capital, each one armored in authority, trembling beneath it. They presented strategies. One proposed overwhelming bombardments of human colonies. Another suggested genetic warfare, stripping Earth of its crops and air. The Emperor listened, eyes narrowed. Then the doors opened, and a note slid across the floor. No one had seen who delivered it. No alarms had tripped. Just a slip of paper, human letters carved in black ink. I'm already here. Panic erupted. Soldiers rushed the corridors, scanning every shadow, every vent. They found nothing. Hours later, when the Emperor returned to his chambers, his private guards lay unconscious, untouched but marked with the smell of coffee. On his desk sat a single cup, steam curling upward. He hurled it across the room, but the scent lingered, stubborn as memory. The Boogeyman struck differently. Entire academies found their courtyards burned overnight, not with fire, but with trails of charred meat and bones. Banquets turned grotesque, grills overturned, as though he had held a feast of destruction. One recording showed him standing in the ruins, cape dragging, holding a weapon in one hand and a spatula in the other. "Dinner's canceled," he drawled, before walking off into smoke. The cadets who survived swore they would never raise arms again. "He could have killed us," one whispered, "but he spared us." "That is worse. It means he chose." The Senate argued whether these were men or myths. One scientist, pale and trembling, rose with forbidden research. She spoke of human brain chemistry, of their capacity for focus, their terrifying adaptability, their peculiar drive to protect family above all else. "They are not merely primates," she warned. "They are apex predators with restraint. We killed what they loved. That was our mistake." She was laughed off the floor, dismissed as hysterical. But her words spread in secret. Officers copied them onto datapads. Soldiers repeated them in hushed tones. The Empire was learning fear not from defeat, but from the knowledge that defeat was inevitable. Alien civilians began defecting. Smugglers ferried supplies to hidden human enclaves. Even Imperial soldiers deserted, slipping into shadows, unwilling to face the hunters. The Baba Yaga left messages carved into bulkheads. "Go home." The Boogeyman left notes pinned to ruined banners. "Hug your kids." These were not threats, they were commandments, and the galaxy obeyed. The Emperor ordered a trap. He would gather his fleets, his strongest, his best, lure the humans into a final confrontation. "We will end the legend," he vowed. Massive armadas assembled, millions of soldiers, war machines enough to blot out stars. Banners rose, drums thundered, speeches promised the annihilation of Earth's demons. Yet beneath the bravado, hands trembled on triggers. Officers whispered prayers. Some slipped flasks of human liquor into their belts, as though drinking their enemy's spirit might protect them. The Empire was armed, but its heart was already cracked. On the eve of the gathering, a broadcast cut across the galaxy. Not Imperial propaganda, but human transmission. No threats, no declarations. Just a voice, calm and clear, over faint guitar strings. "You killed them," the voice said. "That was your choice. This is ours." The transmission ended. Across the Senate chamber, silence heavier than death. No one laughed. No one mocked. They knew then that the trap was not theirs. They were already inside the human's design. Admirals began to see the pattern. Every ship they'd lost, every admiral slain, every academy burned. It had not been random vengeance. It had been chess. Supply lines severed in places that forced fleets into predictable formations. Leaders eliminated so that panic replacements would follow predictable orders. Even the cadets spared. It wasn't mercy. It was strategy. Send survivors home with fear, and they would spread it faster than death. The humans were not fighting war. They were carving the battlefield to their design. The strategist with the staff, long dismissed, rose in the chamber once more. "You have already lost," he said, voice trembling. "You think you are luring them. You think this trap is yours. But everything you have done has been their choice. We are already in their hands." The Emperor hissed, ordering his guards to silence him. But too many in the chamber believed. Fear had hollowed them, and in fear truth found fertile ground. On the frontier, alien families began fleeing imperial space, whispering they would rather face the unknown than the human's wrath. Merchants painted human flags on their ships as protection. Soldiers began deserting en masse, claiming illness, vanishing into the void. And everywhere the same question was asked: why did they smile before they died? No propaganda could erase it. No speech could explain it. The truth had settled in the bones of the galaxy. They smiled because they knew this was coming. The Baba Yaga moved closer to the heart world. He left no wreckage this time, only silence. Fleets expected to intercept him reported nothing, until their lights flickered and their bridges were found empty. The Boogeyman tore through fuel depots, not destroying them, but rearranging them into grotesque shapes. Messages in fire. Dinner's ready. Still laughing? The galaxy shuddered at the humor, because humor meant control, and control meant they were not even struggling. The humans were enjoying this. In the Senate, fear turned to whispers of surrender. Some demanded they offer Earth tribute. Others argued to assassinate their own emperor to appease the men. None agreed on a course, but all agreed on one truth. The Empire was no longer laughing. It was listening for footsteps, for music, for the hiss of a can opening in the dark. One night, deep in the capital, a child awoke to find a man sitting at her kitchen table. He was dressed in black, sipping coffee, silent. He smiled at her gently, put a finger to his lips, and was gone before her screams brought guards. Another night, an entire garrison woke to find their barracks filled with smoke, barbecue grills glowing, though none had been lit. On the wall was scrawled, "See you soon." The humans were not hiding. They were announcing themselves like storm clouds. The Emperor, desperate, demanded his fleets prepare for the grand ambush. He promised the galaxy a victory, so total it would erase the smiles forever. His generals saluted, but their eyes betrayed them. They had already seen the truth. They knew the trap was not theirs. Still, orders were orders. Fleets gathered, armadas coiled, the serpent's jaws wide open. Banners rippled, engines burned. The galaxy held its breath. And then, on the edge of imperial space, two ships appeared. One sleek, silent, black as a coffin. The other crude, painted in stripes, dragging a flag like a cape. Their signals cut through the void. The first voice was calm, polite, merciless. "Thank you for assembling. This will save us some time." The second voice laughed, warm and cruel at once. "Y'all really shouldn't have killed our wives." The trap was sprung, but it was not the Empire's. The fleets of the Empire gathered like a storm wall. Thousands of warships spread across the void, their banners blazing in defiance of dread. Cannons aligned, engines thrummed, soldiers braced with trembling hands. It was supposed to be the greatest display of force in history. The Emperor himself stood at the heart of it all, seated on a throne aboard the colossal dreadnought crown of serpents, his jeweled claws wrapped around the arms of his chair. He promised himself this would be the night the humans' myth ended. Yet for all the thunder and firepower, the silence of the void seemed louder than the roar of engines. Two ships entered the field. Just two. One, black and sleek as a coffin drifting toward its grave. The other, ugly, stitched from parts, a flag trailing behind it like a cape of defiance. No escorts, no fleets, no armies. Only two men walking alone into the serpent's maw. The comms crackled. The first voice was quiet, almost kind. "Thank you for assembling. This will save us some time." The second followed, thick with humor that stung like barbed wire. "Y'all really went all out. Appreciate the effort. Shame it's for your funeral." The Empire fired first. Thousands of cannons ignited, a storm of plasma lighting the void. Explosions thundered where the two ships should have been torn apart. For a moment, the Emperor allowed himself to smile. Then the smoke cleared. The ships were gone. In their place, the Empire's own cannons turned against one another, hacked in silence, firing into friendly ranks. Warp gates twisted open without command, dragging entire cruisers into nothingness. Satellites, thought to be harmless, revealed hidden weapons. Rail cannons disguised for years, calibrated for this single hour. It had not been vengeance. It had been planning. Every battle, every strike, every whispered warning had been part of a net slowly closing. Now it snapped shut. Panic surged across the fleets. Admirals screamed orders, but their comms crackled with Earth music instead of reports. Guitars strummed. A man's voice sang words no alien understood, yet the melody carried doom. Officers tore at their headsets, unable to drown it out. Ships collided in chaos. Soldiers shrieking as their own weapons turned inward. Across the void, the Baba Yaga moved, not firing wildly, but with surgical precision. He slipped between destroyers, each strike calculated, every kill inevitable. He was not fighting, he was executing. On the other flank, the Boogeyman laughed as he tore through frigates, his ship cutting across the formation like a blade through silk. "Y'all built yourselves a nice little parade," he drawled over open comms. "Mind if I cut in?" The Emperor rose from his throne, scales pale, tail lashing. He demanded his personal guard prepare for boarding, though no boarding alarms had sounded. He sensed it, felt it in his bones, that they were already here. Shadows moved in the halls of the dreadnought. Soldiers fired at nothing, hearing footsteps that grew closer, closer, closer. One by one, the lights went out. When they flickered back, a man in black stood in the council chamber, pouring himself coffee from the Emperor's own decanter. "You killed her," he said softly, his voice polite but merciless. "Everything else is optional." Guards lunged. They fell. The Baba Yaga set the cup down, not a drop spilled, and walked forward with death in his eyes. At the same moment, the Boogeyman crashed into the hangar. Explosions lit the decks as he strode through smoke, cape dragging, sidearm blazing. Soldiers broke ranks, not because he killed them, but because he smiled while he did it. He tossed a grenade into a supply cache, leaned against the wall, and quipped, "Hope y'all brought marshmallows." The blast shook the dreadnought, screams echoing as he marched forward, singing an earth anthem under his breath. The Emperor retreated into the throne chamber, his last guards raising shields. The doors burst open. 2 men entered, one silent as shadow, the other humming as though arriving at a barbecue. They did not rush. They did not shout. They simply advanced, inevitability given flesh. The Emperor hissed, raising his jeweled claws. "You cannot destroy an empire with 2 men." The Baba Yaga tilted his head, eyes like a blade pressed to the soul. "We don't have to destroy it," he murmured. "We only have to end you." The Boogeyman grinned, drawing close. "And you should know we always bring flowers." The Emperor lunged. It ended quickly. Too quickly. His jewels clattered to the floor, his body crumpled. His crown bent under a human boot. Silence fell across the chamber. Across the fleets, ships ceased fire. Weapons fell silent. Orders vanished into static. The serpent was dead, and the galaxy knew it. The Baba Yaga stood over the corpse, his face unreadable, then turned away as though it were already forgotten. The Boogeyman picked up the crown, spun it once in his hands, and tossed it aside like trash. "Never did like jewelry," he muttered. Word spread faster than light. The Emperor was gone, his fleets in ruin, his throne shattered. And yet the humans did not claim the empire. They did not seize the capital or demand surrender. Instead, they left a message carved into the skies above the imperial homeworld, burned across the atmosphere in letters so vast no one could miss them. Do not touch what is ours. No declaration of conquest. No new banners. Only a warning. Civilians whispered it in fear and awe. Soldiers laid down arms. Governors fled their posts. The galaxy realized the humans had not come to rule. They had come to teach a lesson, and the lesson was extinction. Not of life, but of arrogance. The Baba Yaga returned to his ship, silent, his coffee cooling, untouched. The Boogeyman followed, flag dragging, whistling like a man leaving a party. They did not look back. The Empire's worlds trembled. Legends began that night, carried on every tongue. One man who walked like silence, one who laughed like thunder. Children drew their faces in ash. Priests spoke their names with reverence. The galaxy would never forget the day 2 men brought an empire to its knees. And yet the most terrifying truth was whispered in the darkest corners, where fear and awe became prayer. They weren't fighting, the whispers said. They were only teaching. On the bridge of his ship, the Baba Yaga finally sat, eyes distant, voice low. "She smiled before she died," he murmured. The Boogeyman cracked open a can, raised it high, and replied, "Guess she knew we'd handle the rest." They clinked can and cup together, a toast to the dead, a promise to the living. Beyond the ruined fleets, the stars were silent again. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of a galaxy that had learned to fear humanity. And in that silence, the lesson lingered, carved deeper than fire or steel. Do not touch what is theirs.